small arms and light weapons in Nigeria, in line with the Economic Community of West African States Convention.
My name is Nnenna Elendu, Ukeje, member representing Bende Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm from Abia State. May I move, and I so do, that the House do consider a bill for an act to establish the National Commission on Small Arms and Light Weapons, charged with responsibility to, amongst other things,
Honorable colleagues, order.
To, amongst other things, regulate and prohibit proliferation of small arms, ammunition, and light weapons, and sensitize the public on the dangers of small arms and light weapons in order to discourage their production and to combat the problem of the proliferation of small arms and light weapons in Nigeria, in line with the Economic Community of West African States Convention on Small Arms and Light Weapons and for related matters, standing in the names of Honorable Yakubu Dogara and one other. I so move.
My name.
Thank you very much again, Ms. Nnenna Elendu, Ukeje, member representing Bende Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm from Abia State. Mr. Speaker, it gives me great pleasure that this bill again has found its way to the floor of the House and has earned the interest of the Speaker. In 2013, when I first brought this bill to the floor of the House, it was born out of a desire to hopefully ensure that the conditions of the ECOWAS Treaty, in line with the United Nations Programme of Action, were fulfilled, and hopefully at least fast-track the domestication of the bill. 5 years on, Mr. Speaker, in the odyssey of what I considered at the time to be a very important bill, the urgency goes way beyond the desire to fulfill our treaty obligations and being politically correct to a more tangible, more desperate, more pressing need to save our country and our lives from the devastating consequences of small arms and light weapons. My dear colleagues, what used to be a fringe conversation has become mainstream. Conversations about Nigeria's security situation is highlighted on a daily basis. Communal conflicts, religious crisis, insurrection, terrorism, insurgency, militancy, revolt, electoral violence, robberies, cross-border smuggling, kidnapping, sexual violence, domestic violence, and all other threats as highlighted in the National Security Strategy has been on the increase in the last couple of years. In a recent meeting, Mr. Speaker, the United Nations Center for Disarmament coordinator, Mr. Ige, said that West Africa had about 500 million small arms and light weapons, and that of that number, 70% of those arms reside in Nigeria. She put the number at 350 million. Responsible for this, she said, were obsolete laws and ineffective stockpile management. Ambassador Imohe, who currently heads the Presidential Committee Against the Proliferation of Small Arms and Light Weapons, stated that Nigeria's gun control laws were obsolete and that we could not use 1959 laws to tackle 20th century crimes. At the risk of sounding immodest, Mr. Speaker, sir, my dear colleagues, the 7th Assembly had passed this bill on the Commission, and we believe that in no small way it was the intervention of this House that led to the formulation of the Presidential Committee on Small Arms and Light Weapons. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, this bill not only intends to address security issues, because globally it has now been said that small arms and light weapons are not only security issues, but that they are also human rights issues. Mr. Speaker, people have said that our country is on the brink. Some people have said that Nigeria is a country at war. But even some eminent personalities in this country have, out of frustration, cried out for self-defense. The casualty figures are very high, both on the sides of non-state actors as well as on the side of state actors. Mr. Speaker, my fear is that if this proliferation of small arms and light weapons is left unabated, there will be mutually assured destruction. On almost a daily basis since the second quarter of last year, motions have been brought to the floor of this House about various theaters of violence. They have claimed several lives. Statistics from the Office of the Senate President say that in the Middle Belt region alone, that there have been 80 reported cases from January to May this year, and that over 887 people have died between the 1st of January and 29th of April 2018. Mr. Speaker, Zamfara State is another serious theater of violence, as well as Kaduna State. Mr. Speaker, only last week, the movement Nigeria Mons broke down its casualty figures, and they said Benue State had the highest number with 534 deaths, and then Borno State, Kaduna, and Akwa Ibom with the least number of states. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, sir, the former head of state, General Abubakar, in October 2016, gave grim figures of killings in 4 northern states: Plateau, Nasarawa, Kaduna, and Benue. He stated that about 2,500 people had been killed, 62,000 people displaced, $13.7 billion lost to clashes, and 47% in internally generated IGR in the affected states had been lost. Mr. Speaker, it's a common saying that small arms and light weapons have killed more people than weapons of mass destruction. And to highlight that statement, the former United Nations Secretary General, Kofi Annan, could not have been more critical when he said, and I quote, that with 16 billion military-grade ammunition produced annually, there are enough small arms and ammunition enough to shoot every man, woman, and child on the planet twice. I know that in highlighting these figures, I'm preaching to the converts, because you, my dear colleagues, are saddled with the responsibility of bringing to the floor of the National Assembly on a daily basis the sad stories of this mindless and losing battle against small arms and light weapons. Mr. Speaker, I shall quickly speak to the sources of these small arms and light weapons. Historical accounts state that the wars in the Nano River Basin between Liberia and Sierra Leone accounted for a large number of small arms and light weapons. Further conflicts in Côte d'Ivoire and Mali exacerbated the situation. The breakdown of law and order in Libya, with the mercenaries coming back to the West African region, also increased the number. Only recently, Mr. Speaker, the success of the combined Iraqi wars and the Arab Springs ensured that there were even more arms in circulation in West Africa. Of course, with the fall of ISIS in Syria and their allegiance to Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, we found out that we had a lot of returnee jihadists coming back to Nigeria with their arms, with their expertise, as well as with their money. Mr. Speaker, it has also been said that Nigeria is a country of origin, it's a country of source, and it's a country of destination for small arms and light weapons through our porous borders. The immediate past spokesperson for the Nigerian Army, Colonel Sagir, said that there are at least 250 illegal footpaths from Damaturu to Maiduguri axis that leads you direct to Cameroon and Chad. They also said that flanking the west, the Diroko border and the Seme border, there are about 150 unmanned illegal routes. The Controller General of Customs, Babangide, said that as far as he was aware, we had 1,487 illegal routes nationwide. But of course, the Minister for Internal Affairs, General Dambazao, put the number at over 1,500 illegal routes where these arms come into Nigeria from. Mr. Speaker, and that is towards the north. But towards the south, The Gulf of Guinea is also a very porous area. And so we find that with the stretch of the Atlantic that is unmanned, there's a lot of trade, exchange for arms and stolen crude. Of course, it is also said that in the southeast that over 60% of the locally produced guns that are used in Nigeria are produced in the southeastern region. Mr. Speaker, these are illegal routes. This House had cause to speak about the Nigerian customs intercepting arms in this country in 2017. In 2017, one container was intercepted, another 14 containers were intercepted in the Lagos Tinkan Island port, and then an aircraft was intercepted in Kano on its way to Chad. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, now we know that our country is sitting on a keg of gunpowder. And why this commission now, Mr. Speaker, at this time? Aside from the obvious facts, Mr. Speaker, this commission, as at the last meeting with Mohammed Ibn Chambers, the Secretary General for West Africa and the Sahel, on proliferation of small arms and light weapons, he stated that Nigeria and the Gambia were the only two countries in Africa without a national commission against the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. He also stated, and he charged at that meeting, the Nigerian Parliament to come up with a legal framework to create it. Mr. Speaker, there's also been an EU program on small arms and light weapons where they picked 6 countries. Nigeria was not one of the countries picked, in spite of the fact that there's 70% of these arms in Nigeria, because we do not have a commission that does the work. Mr. Speaker, some people will say that there's a presidential committee, but the presidential committee neither has the legal backing, nor does it have, it's blind to the law, and of course, if it is a sine qua non in international law that they must have a national commission, then our presidential committee, without the backing of the law, without appropriation for the National Assembly, without the imprimatur of the National Assembly, is just a coming together of people who cannot do the work for which they have been asked to do. Now, what are the functions of the Commission? The functions of the Commission will be to promote the removal of arms from the society through collection, storage, destruction, management, and stockpiling of small arms and light weapons. They will control the manufacture of small arms and light weapons by monitoring and regulating the activities of local arms manufacturers. The registration of small arms and light weapons, as well as registering of arms to be used in peacekeeping operations. And they will update the register, the international register of the small arms and light weapons and transmit same to the ECOWAS. They will also establish local programs of action to prevent, combat, and eradicate the illicit trade of small arms and light weapons. Mr. Speaker, sir, the executive arm of government, championed by the Office of the National Security Advisor, has already started to work on transmitting the Presidential Committee on Small Arms and Light Weapons to a commission. That we all realize that it is only, and last week, the executive announced that they were going to set up a commission of this kind. But, Mr. Speaker, we all realize that setting up commissions must be backed by law, and the National Assembly is the only body that is charged with the responsibility of coming up with these laws to give legal backing. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is my hope that we do that which we already started 5 years ago and come up with this commission. I hope that my colleagues, if you will not pass this bill because of me, I hope that the other anonymous, will throw his weight behind this bill and hopefully sway my dear colleagues to pass this bill. I so support.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Clerks invited to read the long title of the bill.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, a bill for an act to establish National Commission on Small Arms and Light Weapons, charged with the responsibility to, among other things, regulate, prohibit proliferation of small arms, ammunition, and light weapons, and sensitize the public on the dangers of small arms and light weapons in order to discourage their production and to combat the problem of the proliferation of small arms and light weapons in Nigeria, in line with the Economic Community of West African States Convention on Small Arms and Light Weapons, and for related matters. Second reading.
Be referred to Committee on National Security and Intelligence.